Thank you. All right, we are back and ready for committee reports. And so Chair Norton is the new chair of the Finance Committee, and we will turn it to Chair Norton.
In the meantime, let's
Worries.
Good. Nobody could hear that. As Deputy Jones referenced earlier, in our Finance Committee, we had a discussion about building safety and the need to look into that and for use for board discretionary funds.
So do you want to make the motion, then we'll go into the,
Yep, that's where I'm
to the
going.
detail? Okay.
So the committee moves that the board approve using $150,000 in the state portion of the board discretionary funds to enhance security methods at the USBE office, starting with physical security for 1 year.
And then Beck, would you like to speak to the motion?
There has been some significant increase in vandalism, both inside and outside of the building. This motion is to look into, under the direction of the superintendency, additional security. And Deputy Jones, do you want to come and address them further on that subject?
Let's see. Chair Norton of the Finance Committee is spot on. The intent here is to, in addition to vandalism incidents, though, we've had quite a few incidents inside the building where we've had individuals from the public come in and cause, increased concern on by our employees for their safety. So the motion would allow for us to set aside that funding or bring that funding out of the state portion of your discretionary funds. Go ahead and enhance the infrastructure, which is our cameras, those types of devices, perhaps badging in, keeping the front door secured, things like that. But then also look at utilizing funding for physical presence of security, guard type aspects. So that's pretty much the gist of it, subject to any questions or concerns.
Thank you, Deputy Jones. Any questions or comments? Behind us, Member Klein.
Yes, so Chair Norton said it was 150,000. On the screen, it says 100,000. Which one is it?
I thought it was 150 is what the original, that might be the older version. Does it say 100 in the backups?
On the screen right now, it says
Okay,
100,000.
that's fine then. We just go with 100.
Okay, follow-up question. Looking through the board docs, it looks like most of it was for security, for a security person or presence. Are we updating cameras? You just mentioned cameras, but I didn't see anything in there about cameras because I think, that would probably be the first.
Chair Norton, go ahead and if you'd like to respond, or Deputy Jones, either one.
Go ahead, ma'am.
We do have some cameras now. That's something that they would start with adding additional, but a security presence is also part of this.
Do we have?
Okay. Can I just say one more thing? I'm
Yes.
just trying to figure out, when you say there's people coming in the building, what door do they come in? And is there a front desk there that somebody's always at to help with that? Or are we taking
Sure.
those kind of measures first before we sink a lot more money into these other things?
Chair, if I
Deputy
may?
Jones, yes, please.
Yeah, so we do have front desk personnel. They are state employees. The concern is that some of the experiences of late have been with individuals that clearly are physically more, I guess, dominant than we would like to see over our staff. So in the interest of protecting staff, we would look at, whether or not to have an additional security presence to help mitigate against that. We run into situations more increasingly of the behavior of these individuals as being more aggressive than we've seen in, I've been here 8 years, and based on where we're located, where this building is located, it's increased quite a bit. In addition to that, I think it's relevant to call your attention to other places like the Rio Grande, where the Utah Transit Authority is located. Before they had an armed presence there, they were experiencing vandalism. There was a knife attack there. Since they put security, a physical security presence, i.e. a guard there, the incidences have dropped considerably. So, and then finally, the governor is very interested in seeing or having, DFCM study all the facilities here in this downtown area and to see if they just need to mandate that all of the agencies or occupants of these buildings, of state buildings, go to a security presence like armed security. Does that answer Board Member Klein's question, sir?
Member Klein?
Yes, while I think the cameras are a good step towards, first initial step, I also worry about the increased surveillance state throughout the state that I wonder if there isn't, some pretext in creating the need for this under the guise of more safety.
Right.
All right, thank you, Member Klein. Member Carey? Oh, did you not?
Well, I just have a point of information or a question for the
Sure.
Deputy Superintendent Jones.
Yes, sir.
So is it $100,000 that's needed, or is it $150,000? Because if
Well,
the-
it's $100,000, Chair, if I may, it's $100,000 initially. That gets us to the point of, for the infrastructure portion, it's highly likely we'll need to come back and ask you for more funding as we evaluate the costs associated with a physical presence of a guard or, those types of services. So right now, the $100,000 helps us increase our infrastructure, security cameras, looking at, other building, I mentioned like, maybe we secure the door and then, for lack of a better term, buzz people in, right? Instead of leaving the doors open, having those types of security measures in place. What it does, though, is that because a lot of these services are on statewide contract, the $100,000 enables us to move quickly, especially since, like we're reporting to you and have very documented evidence of this, we've just seen a marked exponential increase in incidents
But it-
occurring.
May I ask a
Sure,
follow-up?
follow up.
So my concern is if $150,000 is needed, can we just amend this?
Yes.
So here's,
Point of-
let me
point of
weigh in on
order.
that. I'll just respond to that one. In finance, when we approved 150,000, and so I think there may have been a
I don't know
clerical,
why there's a mistake,
there may have
sir,
been just a
so-
clerical mistake. Chair Norton, do you have?
I recall, it was, yes, I
Yeah.
made the motion. It was 100, and we appreciated the austerity. However, in looking at all the backup materials and the costs, it became apparent that 150,000 would be a more prudent ask and reasonable. We also, another point of information that was particularly meaningful to me is all the buildings around here that are public buildings have either guards or someone to let you in or locked systems. And that's just par for the course in this area. So we did do 150
Okay.
originally.
Right. So, Chair, is it okay if a staff member makes a point of order?
Please.
Because, it's not Chair Norton's fault, but what we're doing is we're throwing up the old agenda or the initial agenda item and we're reading off the agenda. What we really need to do is focus on the summary reports that the secretaries do and give to that, which Chair Norton has, right? So that's why she said $150,000. But for some reason, we keep going back to, because to Vice Chair Hart's point, the committees are doing an excellent job of updating or thing. And so what happens is it creates that confusion because we're not using the summaries when we get to the item for your respective chairs to back brief. So if we could make sure we stay on the summaries, that would be great, because the summaries are what changes from the original agenda item, so.
Okay, so the clarification
Yes,
is,
ma'am. Yeah.
clarification is you are seeking, the motion is for 150?
Correct.
Yes,
Okay, all
yes, yes, sir, and thank you, Board Member
you.
Carey,
Got
for
it.
your patience with me, sir. But when I'm resolute in the fact that when I see something like $100,000, I have to go with that, so.
Sure.
So it's 150, sir, so, yeah, thank you.
Deputy Jones will ask for no money before it's time.
Yes, sir.
He sticks to the script, so.
Thank you.
Thank you, and we've got the clarification. It is 150. Any further discussion to the motion? Okay. All in favor, let me read the motion again. Let's see, the committee moves that the board approves using $150,000 in the state portion of the board discretionary funds to enhance security methods at the USBE office, starting with physical security for 1 year. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes.
No.
Oh, we have one no from Member Klein.
Yep.
Okay,
Thank you.
that motion passes. Thank you. Back to you, Chair Norton.
Yes, so item 11.3, R277100. This is definitions for the Utah State Board of Education rules and amendment. The motion for the board is that the committee moves that the board approve R277100 definitions for the Utah State Board of Education rules, draft 1 on second and final reading.
Any discussion of the motion? If not,
I have a question.
oh yes, I'm sorry. Who am I hearing from? Member Klein.
Yes. Okay. So I'm just looking at the definitions and the part that's been taken out. It looks like it's just a simple strikeout of those things that are funded by state or federal dollars. Why we have some explanation as to why we're taking that out. It appears that would expand what we have authority to monitor and evaluate and oversee by taking out that portion that restricts us only to those things that are funded by the state or federal.
Chair Norton, I'll leave
Ben
that to you.
Rasmussen.
Ben?
Thank you, Chair. Ben Rasmussen, Director of Law and Professional Practices. This was brought forward because there was some concern that there would be some programs that the board needed to monitor or to evaluate that wouldn't necessarily be funded by state or federal funds. So we wanted to make it clear that the board could be doing that monitoring business whether or not there were funds involved.
To answer the question, Member Klein? Or follow up?
Do we have specifics on that, or are we going to approve those each as they come up, whether or not they are something that we feel good about or that we feel is within our authority to evaluate, monitor, review, or oversee?
If I
Or
may.
is that just,
Yes, please.
So the one example that I remember that came up during the discussion was the school fees program that we monitor. We don't actually necessarily provide funds to LEAs to carry out the fee waivers and all the requirements of that program, but we do need to monitor what they're doing in there. There may be other programs too, but that was the one example that came up, I think, during the discussion that led to the change.
Right. Does that resolve the question or answer the question, Member Klein? She's muted? Okay.
sorry, was I muted?
Yeah.
Is there?
Did you have
is there
a
way to
follow-up?
Yes. Is there a way to ensure in each, I don't know if there's a rule or something we can put in place that specifically delineates which programs and things that we can oversee and monitor, and that they be included on each rule that needs us to monitor it. And so it becomes an issue of us voting for that instead of just this broad, open-ended ability to monitor and oversee anything.
If I
Ben?
may,
Because I
Chair.
think that
Ben?
would go beyond our authority.
So this is just the general definitions rule. This simply sets out definitions. The authority to monitor or evaluate review programs would come either through statute or through other rules. So this is simply creating definitions, but for any given program, the board's authority to monitor or to evaluate would come through another source.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? I see Member Bogus.
Thank you, Chair. So as I read this, the first thing that came to my mind is I really don't want the state board evaluating every program that comes forth that I'm involved in. And even though I know that a lot of times people respond with, well, that's not our intention. The reality is with this language, you can. And I think that Member Klein produces a point when she said maybe that's a reach, maybe it's a usurpation of local control, maybe it's a usurpation of teacher autonomy, teacher team autonomy. And even if that is not our intention, we're removing language that prevents us from invading into that space. And that does concern me.
Any other comment? I'll comment one comment, and perhaps Ben could clarify it. My understanding is that we have the constitutional responsibility of general control and supervision, which is not limited to oversight of funds. And so this is consistent with that, but any use of that power would necessarily come in a specific rule that would say, okay, now we're going to use that power to monitor or oversee X, Y, or Z. Is that the intent? I think that's what I recall from finance.
This is
but-
basically just saying this is what we do when we monitor. It doesn't give you the authority necessarily to monitor a program, like you said. That comes through other authority, other rules, or other statutes. This just describes what monitoring looks like when we have authority to do it, or what evaluator review looks like when we have authority to do it.
And that the Constitution doesn't give that authority only in the case of state or federal funding.
That's correct.
And so, but the use of that power would be very specifically delineated and voted. And okay, any other comment or question to the motion? Okay. The motion for the board is that the committee moves that the board approve R277-100, definition for Utah State Board of Education rules, draft 1 on second and final reading. All in favor, please raise your hand.
No,
All opposed? We have Member
no.
Bogus, Member Vice Chair Earl, and Member Klein. 3? Did I miss anybody? Klein and Earl and Bogus were no, correct? Okay. Okay, back to you, Chair
Okay.
Norton.
Item 11.4, State Fiscal Year 2022 Carry Forward Balance Status and Approval for U-Lead. The motion before the board is that the committee moves that the board approves the U-Lead spend plan for the unencumbered state fiscal year 2022 carry forward balances.
Any discussion of that motion? If not, all those.
Yes, I do.
I'm sorry, I can't see your.
Sorry, it's tricky online.
Member Klein.
Yeah, yes,
Gotcha.
and I don't have it all delineated. I just have this document on attendance that is attached in the board docs to this. I mean, it looks like this is about a lot more than attendance. It gets into social emotional learning and technology and a lot of language around the critical disparities that are deal with race and ethnicity, which is problematic to me. Disproportionate amounts of historically underrepresented Black and Hispanic and Latino, that educators are this was specifically talking about educators that are thinking of leaving, which is very subjective. There's just a lot of subjective language in here that I have a problem with. It appears to be very, the focus is not what it is described on this document that we're looking at, from what I can tell. So I will not be voting for this.
Thank you. Any
Chair-
response or further discussion?
Well,
Chair
I
Norton?
was just going to say, we asked for some additional documentation from ULEAD, and we received that information on what the broader scope and the long-term plans are for ULEAD. And yes, we could still get more. This is, we have a brand-new director in there, but Chair Moss, I think you kind of are our expert possibly in the room on this. Do you want to maybe explain what the mission and the road ahead for ULEAD looks like?
Sure, I'll be brief. And I serve with Brittany Cummins as the co-chairs of the steering committee, which helps our director take input from the field, formulate research priorities, and then Director Everett has been in the process of partnering up with our higher ed institutions to look at what's working. So the question is, number one, what questions does the field want us to look at? Then how do you look at them and then bring them back so people can collaborate and discuss? So the steering committee, which is made up of principals and teachers and district officers, identified these 4 topics. Director Everett has formulated questions that ask what is working, what's moving the needle in these areas. And so in those topics that came from the field, she's prioritizing funding to go get the research done that will understand exactly some of the things we heard about earlier, given ESSER and other efforts out there, what's producing academic success in these areas. So I appreciate the backup, and I'm excited the direction she's trying to take this.
And I know she's also creating a repository of this research so that education can have easy access to this information that they're collecting and finding.
Correct. There will be a repository, but it will also be circulated regularly. So she's got a pilot going with BYU, the U, others, and the idea is that these higher ed institutions, their ed school researchers will be looking regularly at what's working best, who's doing it, and how are they doing it. Those will be pumped out into the system, and so the pilot happened to come from my backyard of Wasatch, working with BYU, and they just want to see who's doing the best through the COVID period in first grade language arts and sixth grade math, I think they were looking at. So there's a data component to that, and then there's the piece that we'll get back from higher ed, and that'll create kind of a PLC type opportunity to get together those that are interested in that subject and those that appear to be outliers. So I've spoken too long. You wound me up, and I do love what she's doing. I think it's a great opportunity to learn again from these great Utah success stories and just understand them better so that they can share it. That's all they do. It's not a mandate. It's not a program. It's just understand and share. So I think Director Everett's moving the ball really well on that. Member Booth.
I just wanted to speak up regarding the value of these very well-prepared co-chairs and directors and committee members or task force committee or members who spend valuable time, careful, thoughtful research, consideration of that research, and then make recommendations. I don't feel in the limited time that we have to review everything that we should be jumping on the bandwagon of wanting to put our stamp, our change whatever is being brought to us by very well prepared, well-meaning, and highly qualified individuals who are living with this much more frequently than we are. So I'm really grateful for these and others who input to the board from their various perspectives, from their various positions of knowledge and experience. And I fully support the recommendation of ULEAD and Director Everett and the co-chairs and others who have given us this recommendation and asked for our stamp of approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Booth. Any further comments or questions? If not,
Chair,
motion, oh,
Can I
sorry.
make-
Do we have
may I make
Member Klein? Yes.
one more comment? Yes, just one more quick comment. I'm just being able to quick look at this again, and there's a couple spots in this attendance document that says that 4 out of 5 educators who participated in the EdWeek technology survey agreed that students' behavior tends to worsen as screen time increases. And then it talks also about how adolescent mental health has become a national emergency which infers it's due to the tech, and yet the entire document is about, in spite of that, how can we use tech more and make it more engaging for the students? And so this is where I'm having a huge problem, because we are acknowledging that the tech in our schools is creating disruption, is creating unsafety, it's creating mental health issues in our kids, and yet we are continuing to push the technology at every turn. And so I just want to be on the record to say, student support or classroom practices that support student wellness, like SEL and mindfulness and yoga, all those things we're putting in place to fix the problem are not what's going to fix the problem. The overemphasis and continual push on technology in the classroom is what's creating the problem. And if we want our kids to be psychologically safe and mentally healthy, we need to get back to academics, a focus on academics and not all of these other distractions, and move away from the push for more and more technology. That's obviously and causing the problem and has been detailed as such in these studies. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Klein. I'll just respond briefly, having been in the steering committee meeting. I think the question they framed was, there are challenges from technology. And so what's the best way to use, who is best using technology in a way that drives student success, acknowledging that there are some uses of tech that don't move the needle. So I think that was the discussion, and I can't speak for the entire document, but I understand that's the question that will be asked. What's the best way to use technology? Any other? Okay, so the motion for the board, the committee moves that the board approve the ULEAD spend plan for the unencumbered state fiscal year 2022 carry forward balances. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay, or raise your hand. Okay, we've got members Bogus, Green, and Klein. Okay. Member, Vice Chair Earl, did you vote?
She dropped off.
We dropped her, okay. Okay, so that motion passes. Let's see, back to Chair Norton.
Yes, 11.5, school construction timeline and review and approval of the school construction resource manual. The motion before the board is that the committee moves that the board approve the timeline for the implementation of the governor's recommendation and the resource manual updates as required by rule.
Any discussion or question to that motion?
Yes.
Here, but I can't see. Is that Member Klein?
Right. Member Klein.
Member
yes,
Klein, you're
sorry.
on. You got it.
Yes, so as I was looking through the documents for this, there was a link on page 2 of the main document that linked to the, I'm trying to remember, I don't have it in front of me, but it leads to the Centers for Community Learning, the school manual for Centers for Community Learning, which is an idea that came before under the Obama administration with Secretary Arne Duncan, where schools become the center of the community and everything happens there. This was, sorry, I have my camera on here, but this was a link that when I clicked on, it didn't work. And yet it's incorporated by reference into what we are passing. I was able to do a Google search and found an old version from 2003. It's a 100+ page manual that gives incredible detail on what these schools should look like in order to become the centers of community, where it functions as much more than just a school. And yet, when I asked our staff about that, they said, oh, well, they did some research into it also. They said they realized that some of the links don't work. So we don't really know what we're voting on, because it's these links incorporate it by reference, but we can't actually see what they are. He found the old one online that I had found, and he said that manual was approved by a company whose name has changed 2 times since that manual was created in 2003. And it looks like they're getting ready to update the manual again, but we don't know what that looks like. And so I would say that we either postpone the vote on this, or I will be voting no. And so I would move to postpone a vote on this until we have all of the information so we can make an informed decision.
So there's a motion to postpone. Is there a second? I'm sorry, is that in order? I think it's in
Don't we
order.
already have a motion on the board? Didn't I read the motion?
The motion is to approve, but I think that's,
I would make a substitute motion.
I think the motion to postpone is in order when there's the motion from the committee, but there can be a motion to postpone if I'm hearing correctly. Okay, but it does need a second, however. Do we have a
I
second?
would second that motion if for nothing more than the purpose of discussing.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded to postpone consideration of item number 11.5. Any discussion to that motion? Member
I
Laird?
would just,
Well, go ahead. As the maker of the motion, go ahead, Member Klein.
yes, so my concern about passing anything that has links that incorporate other documents by reference to outside organizations that can change those documents at any time, makes it so it's a dynamic document that may change after we approve it. So unless these things that are incorporated by reference are set in stone and unchanging, or if they change, it automatically triggers that it comes back to us for our approval. I don't think that we should be passing things that incorporate by reference.
Member Klein, point of order before we take other comments. What's the nature or timeline of your motion to postpone?
Until all the links in the document actually work, and until there's something in place that guarantees that those links that are incorporated, or those documents that are incorporated by reference, will not and cannot change without some kind of notification, or some kind of something being triggered, so that we can reconsider whatever it is we've passed if we have dynamic documents that are incorporated by reference.
Okay, was that the understanding of the second?
Yes.
Okay, comment, discussion of the motion then. Member Norton? Chair Norton,
I'd like
excuse
to
me.
know what link, where's the link in what document?
Member Klein?
So it's on page 2 of, I don't have it up in front of me.
The
I just remember it was on page 2 as a large document.
Oh, it's probably the construction manual. It's probably the manual. Page 2 of the school construction.
Yes, it's the school construction manual.
Oh,
Page 2 on communities as the center of learning, or centers of like the CLC, I think that's what they call it, Centers for Community Learning. Or
Okay.
Wait.
Hold on, let's get some order to, does that answer the question, Chair Norton? Okay, well, next up we have Member Green.
Yeah, I do agree with what Member Klein is saying. I do think it's important that we understand exactly what we're voting on, and that there's no accountability with a moving target. So we make sure that we are very clear, and we've been given the proper opportunity to understand what it is we're saying yes to. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Wood?
Just a clarifying question. Isn't the motion simply to approve the timeline? Right. And the timeline is such that the document gets updated by November of 2023. Therefore, we would have an opportunity to see this document come to us before the approval in 2023?
Chair Norton, can we turn that one to you? Is that
Yes,
accurate?
that is accurate, that we are approving a timeline of the governor's recommendation and to have a resource manual required by the governor's rule,
And so that.
correct?
Okay, so that includes then review and bringing back to us of the resource manual? Okay. Thank you, okay. Any further discussion to the motion to postpone? If not, the motion is that the board postpones the vote on item 11.5 until all the links in the school construction manual document actually work, and there is a guarantee that those documents incorporated by reference will not be further changed. All in, yes. Member Earl, Lear.
Point of clarification. I don't see that these documents are incorporated by reference. I guess and maybe this is a question for Member Klein. Are you saying because the construction manual is incorporated by reference, then every link within it is incorporated by reference? Is that what you're?
Member Klein, if you'd like to respond?
Yeah, well, it looks like to me that we are looking to approve, if not today, at some point in the future, as part of this motion, this manual is part of this resource manual.
Yeah, but I guess just to answer my own question, I guess I don't see that every link that's included in the manual is technically incorporated by reference. These seem to be just resources that are offered or examples that are offered or something like that. So I too would like to know what I'm voting on, but I feel like I do because these are just additional pieces of information within the manual, not necessarily guiding principles. Thanks.
Thank you. And
It's
Deputy
incorporated.
Jones is, Member Klein, can we turn to Deputy Jones for a response on the technicalities of the manual?
Hello, I'm hoping to increase my batting average here because I haven't been doing too well. So, and I understand the questions. So this is actually a perpetual process. So the governor's office sent a letter to then board leadership asking if the board would consider 3 specific improvements to what they feel is school construction across the public education. So then it went to Finance Committee. Finance Committee says, yes, we'll do that. Then in a subsequent meeting, which is what is in front of you right now, we established a timeline with all the other muscle movements that financial operations is doing, which includes school construction. We just wanted to make sure that we were supportive of what the board's original intent, which you voted on, which was to support the governor's recommendations, that we had an appropriate timeline, which goes to this is just what you're approving is the timeline. One of his recommendations was specific to the fact that the resource manual it's not updated. Links are not good. There's all sorts of room for improvement. So yes, that resource manual will come back to you. What we're just asking for so that as we move along this action of adopting the governor's recommendations, improving on school construction, that that it's going to take us this long till November of '23, at least to get to the point where we can bring an updated and improved resource manual to you to review, all links considered, all of that considered, so that we can then turn around and implement it or publish it back to the LEAs. So.
Thank you, Deputy Jones. Member Bogus, did you have your light on for this?
Yes, Chair, I did. So just as a point of clarity, as I looked through this document, I noticed many things, but most specifically, I noticed a publication date of April 30th, 2013.
Right.
And then I noticed a secondary date that invoked ADA compliance, I believe, in 2020. It's clear back here. Regardless, we haven't updated this document in a decade?
Not in its entirety, no. We haven't done that. There's been improvements or updates to it, and that's been part of the challenge and why we brought the rule as well, is so that, I mean, as everybody has noted, it's quite extensive, right? So rather than doing it piecemeal, we want to take this timeline, get it updated, get in compliance with it, take the governor's recommendations, and then, have you approve it for release to the field.
So we're approving a timeline based on a 10-year-old document? Am
No,
I-
what
I'm
you-
not fully understanding maybe.
Okay.
Go ahead,
What you're
Deputy
doing is
Superintendent.
approving the timeline for us to do what what the board has approved is supporting the governor's recommendations, which part of it includes the resource manual. It's all part of those 3 recommendations that the governor made, the resource manual being one of them, just a piece to this. We just put that in the backups to show you how much more time it's going to take, that we need all these months to do this because we really haven't updated that manual consistently and to the full extent of all its pages, and the links and things like that. So,
Okay, thank you.
does that help, ma'am?
Yes, absolutely,
Okay,
sir,
thank
thank you.
you.
So
Thank you.
so being part of the Finance Committee, I think a couple of the questions that have been raised seem to be the impetus for these proposed changes. That it's old, hasn't been fully reviewed, links are dead, and so we've also had out there in the field, including my backyard of Wasatch, there's construction going on. People are sort of asking questions, what's the best practice, what's going on, where's the guidance? And so I think that was the impetus for the governor to recommend to finance. We need to review all this stuff and get it, brought up to speed. There are also changes in things like design, build, construction that necessitate another look at some of how we've provided guidance in the past. So we're taking a 8, 9, 10-year-old document and trying to do an overhaul is how I understood the governor's recommendations to us in the Finance Committee. So this is, I think, just a timeline to do those things, and I think that's all that's really up here. And then the manual, once it comes to finance, would be reviewed. And I'm sorry, Chair Norton, I'm stepping in because I was the chair when we got this process started. But the idea then was, after all this is reviewed, including links and timeliness and updated construction methods, it would come to finance and then to the board for review. So we'd have the opportunity to ask all these same questions with a live resource manual and whether we approve or deny. Is that correct? Okay. Oh, Member Booth.
Chair Moss, I just wanted to say that we're just voting to let the fun and the work begin. And there's a lot of work that definitely needs to be done, but we've got to approve the timeline that will allow that work to be completed so that we can benefit from everything having been, every page being turned over, everything being considered and reconsidered before we bring it for approval many months hence. So I say, let's the fun begin, and I'm going to be voting for this.
All right, thank you, Member Booth. The motion on the table is to postpone. So to be clear, that's the pending motion, and let's vote on that. The motion for Member Klein is that the board postpones the vote on item 11.5 until all the links in the school construction manual document actually work, and there is a guarantee that those documents incorporated by reference will not be further changed. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say no. No.
Oh,
Sorry? Was there a yay vote? Okay, so the motion fails unanimously, and we come back to the underlying motion from the committee, which is that the board approve the timeline for the implementation of the governor's recommendations and the resource manual update as required by rule. Any further discussion of that motion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed
Aye.
say no. That motion passes unanimously. All right, thank you.
That
Chair
concludes
Norton,
my
back to you.
report.
Does that conclude the
That
report?
concludes my report.
Okay, thank you.